Hello and welcome. My name's Sandy Hood and this is the Astranti operational case study video number 1 for the Merchants exam, which is in preparation for August 2015. This is going to be the first of 8 videos, and here I am. This is the role that I have within Astranti. I'm a tutor and I write the mocks for some of the exams. I do some of the case study marking and present the master classes. I've got a background which is 20 years of taking classes in CIMA and other related accountancy courses, and before that worked in financial control within the service sector. These series of videos will address the key points and give you the expert industry guidance and how this relates to this company, Merchants. We're going to look at the business models from the E1 syllabus. We'll look at likely exam issues. I'll give you hints and tips from my expert understanding of the whole of the E1, P1 and F1 syllabuses, but also from my inside knowledge of the supermarket business. We'll carry out a strategic analysis and I'll give you the top 10 issues. It'll work like this. I'll go through the Preseen on a step-by-step basis, looking at the sections one at a time. I'll assume that you've got no prior knowledge as I progress. You'll read a section, make notes, I'll make my reviews, and at the end we'll go through a full strategic analysis and look at the top 10 issues. 8 videos in all, so this is the first of those videos, and we will look at the industry in this particular case. So it's the context. Now, in terms of your overall exam preparation, your exam will be testing you on the background that you will be given in the unseen exam. But what we can do between now and then is we immerse ourselves in the pre-seen material, and that helps when it comes to looking at the unseen material on the day. I will be giving you recommendations, and your recommendations that you give on the day need to be consistent. Here is the cover for the pre-seen material. I'm going to assume that you haven't read it before, but let me give you an overall outline. Here's the contents page showing the 15 pages of what this document's being presented by the examiner. We're going to look at the industry analysis in this particular video, and then the second video we'll look at the company itself and the organisation chart, working our way through. Once we've completed that, we'll then move on and look specifically at the 3 different syllabuses, the E1, the P1 and the F1 syllabuses, and try and match our knowledge with the scenarios that seem to be able to come from this pre-seen. Moving on, we can see the introduction, and instantly we can see that Merchants is a very big company. I'm showing you this on the pre-seen paperwork. I gather from CIMA that because 38 billion is actually slightly more than 25% of 150 billion, they're going to put in the word approximately here. But apart from that, the meaning of the paragraph remains exactly the same. Here we can see that there are 4 players dominating the market, and this is very much the same as we have in the UK. This single player with 24-25% market share, called Merchants, is very, very similar to Tesco's. And these 4 players constitute what we would have come across if we'd have studied the certificate level in the CO4 exam, something called an oligopoly. An oligopoly is where a market is dominated by a small number of players. Oligopolistic markets have a feature where the players within the market will continually watch what the other players are doing to try and make sure that none of them is able to get an advantage over them. So we will have seen the likes of Asda and Tesco's and Morrison's continually checking what the other ones are doing and then responding, and that is a feature of an oligopoly. You may be thinking, well, I was given an exemption on the certificate because I'd already got my degree or another qualification. Do bear in mind that the CIMA examiner is quite entitled to test assumed knowledge because you were given an exemption for this particular exam, the CO4 paper. Right. Second bit within this paragraph is that this market is epitomised by overcapacity and stagnating demand. Two key concerns. One, that there's more supply and the demand is not growing. So another economics topic, again, that relates to the CO4 syllabus. And I've highlighted those two words. And when demand exceeds supply, prices tend to fall. If you think about just a conventional market-town market, at the end of the day, the greengrocers are determined to try to not have to take home cabbages and so on that they will perhaps not be able to sell over the next couple of days. So they will reduce their prices. And this is what's happening in the supermarket business, that there isn't as much demand as there is supply, so the supermarkets are cutting their prices in order to be able to achieve the sales, and as a result they are reducing the margins that they're able to generate. The next paragraph looks at the different types of supermarkets. So we've got the very large ones, hypermarkets, where they are selling 44% of the total sales value. Well, if the sales value is $150 billion, this is $66 billion worth of sales value. And then you look and see the total amount of sales going through the hypermarkets, and you can see that more than double that, in other words 70% compared with 30%, is for non-grocery sales. And as we scale down in size, the next level is the supermarket, and here they are almost exclusively selling groceries. 87% of their sales value is groceries, and you've got this different type of sales mix, this different customer requirement when they go into a supermarket compared with a hypermarket. And here we now come into what I can see as the opportunity for a P1 question. So as you can see, I've added in a little comment in the left margin talking about limiting factors, and it's quite possible when the examiners made such an issue here, generally reducing the amount of shelf space given to non-grocery items, since these represent a low profit alternative to groceries. So a limiting factors question where you are looking at ranking different products on the basis of their contribution per limiting factor would now be looking at them in terms of the contribution per square centimetre and seeing whether they justify their position on the shelf. There is more available to go on the shelf than there is shelf space, so they have to have a pecking order, and the limiting factor analysis would be an excellent way of presenting that. Sure, I've put within the writing as well linear programming. If there was a second limiting factor, then this could be an interpretation of linear programming. Certainly, to my way of thinking, and having spoken to a manager of a local Tesco's supermarket, I can't think of a second limiting factor given the information that's been provided so far. We move along, and we've got the global financial crisis, and here I think we're looking at external influences on the business. And we are well aware from our E1 studies that these are very often classified using the PESTEL analysis. PESTEL analysis, the political environment, the economic environment, which is what this one is, and sociological or trends within people's behaviour, technological changes, and the ecological environment and the legal environment. All these external forces working on a business, working on the merchant's business in this case, to see how they can be impacted by such external arrangements. So in our case, we're looking here at the economic environment and how it's having its effect on merchants, their sales, their profits and their general activities. Things are affecting the middle market. The middle market, which if you're in the UK and you want to try and visualise which businesses, I'm going to say companies like Tesco's, companies that are trying to satisfy people in the middle of the market, not the superior products that you would buy from the likes of Marks and Spencer's food stores or even from Waitrose. Those products are promoted as being superior. Perhaps it's because they have more staff, perhaps it's because they've simply presented them in a different way, but they have this higher quality perception. So sometimes customers are switching into that upper end of the market, but the other one, the one that they are mainly concerned about, and certainly has come up a lot more in the press and on news reports, are those customers who were dealing with supermarkets such as Merchants and Tesco's, who are now doing their shopping in supermarkets such as Lidl and Aldi, those discounters. And this has been brought about in some respects by the global financial crisis, which has resulted in a change in their buying behaviour. I know that many of you may well be looking at this and thinking to yourselves, well, buying behaviour, isn't that a sociological aspect? Fair enough, you could argue that, but I would say on this occasion that we're going to use the economic environment as our explanation in this particular case. Moving on, we come to the major market trends, and here we've got customers demanding better value products. Better value is a good expression, but it's certainly ambiguous. We're not just looking at price, we could be looking at quality, and this switch to the discount end of the market gets a repetition here. Here I want to draw your attention to this 20%, because 20% sounds very big, and certainly it is very big. But what is it 20% of? And within our P1 syllabus, which is a continuation from the statistics within the certificate subject, we learn to be a little bit cautious on percentages. So I'm going to say apply caution We know, for example, that the 6 major players are taking 60% of the market, and these discount supermarkets may well be growing at 20% a year, but if you start from a very low level of revenue, 20% is more easily achieved and constitutes a much smaller amount of the total market value. So apply caution when judging the changes in the market using percentages of growth. It's a good accounting point, and just think for a minute, if you had a $38 billion business, then you really wouldn't expect to see growth of 20% because simply there isn't that level of demand. On the other hand, a £2 million business only has to grow by 400,000 to achieve 20%. The other point within this paragraph that could be missed but shouldn't be missed is what's been going on in both the discount supermarkets and in the middle market. The middle market supermarkets, and the likes of merchants in this case, or if you're visualising it in the UK, the likes of Asda and Morrison's and Tesco's, has been that they have been introducing and focusing on lower prices for their products. There was a feature that talked about the 25% price cuts by Tesco's of some of the leading products. Absolutely massive reduction, really, when you think about it. But they were bringing their prices down so that they were more comparable with the discount supermarkets of Aldi and Lidl. But Aldi and Lidl, having attracted those customers who were used to going to Sainsbury's, Tesco's and so on in the past, have now started to add additional products. So the cheap products that were going at very low prices are now being joined by what they are calling in this paragraph the premium brand. So when we talk about a move towards the middle by all players, that's basically what's happening. The middle market supermarkets dropping their prices, the discounters selling higher priced products. It's certainly bringing the two together, bringing the two into the same sort of marketing area. And it's been made possible for the discounters because once they've got the customers in, they seem to be able to retain them. A reduction in household income as a result of stagnating wages and increasing prices means that customers are trying to save money. So we've got here a change. So a few minutes ago we looked at the pastel analysis and we were thinking about it in terms of the economic influence. Now we've got a sociological change. What's happening? The customer is more likely to do a smaller weekly shop and top up. So we've got two things going on. Topping up during the week, in other words, small value purchase, but on a repetitive basis, and a reduction in the average spend on a weekly shop. So when you take that into perspective and then you look at the relative need to go to an out-of-town store, then you can see that these locations of the large out-of-town stores are becoming less popular. I'll highlight that. And there has been an increase in the number of convenience store outlets. Two things going in different directions. And now we can see that the retailers themselves have driven the growth of the convenience stores. So the convenience, small-time supermarkets, for example, a Tesco Express, are growing and growing and growing in number, and as such, that's matching this change in buying habits. So you begin to see the significance of the external environments on the way in which the business is managed. And that's very much an E1 topic. So here's a little paragraph. The supermarket companies have recognised changes within their external environments and they've responded. The changes in the buying habits, which is our sociological environment, have led the companies to opening more stores which are accessible by customers, more small convenience stores. And this point is worth looking at a second time, because within the marketing section of the E1 syllabus we have to recognise the marketing mix. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add my little grid for the marketing mix across the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3, because mine is a continual run of the sheets and it will fit in nicely within that blank section. And we will look at that in terms of how we can already start to complete it from the point of view of a supermarket company within merchants as a supermarket company within Pictland. My little grid's in place, and you can see that I've put 7 P's. I think 7 P's is very appropriate to the supermarket industry. This is a service industry. This isn't a manufacturing industry, and as such, when we look at the marketing mix, we see very strongly that all 7 of the P items are significant. Now, we know already from our discussions that price has become very important. Is that a surprise? Well, no, it isn't, because price is generally an important part whenever you're dealing with a company that's operating within an oligopolistic market. The price and the continual checking of one another's prices is what is a standard characteristic. The product, well, we haven't had a lot in terms of the product to deal with, but we certainly had in that last paragraph this idea of perhaps slightly cheaper products in order to be able to generate lower priced sales being brought into the more middle market operators. But no discussion really in terms of quality yet. Place, which in my opinion is a word that was chosen because it begins with the letter P but really means distribution, is something that we've just looked at, and this is the one that I want to look at now, because in terms of the place, we are now looking at supermarkets being convenient to the customers, and that's a development, and that was one that we just discussed in terms of why and how that sociological change has taken place. But place within the marketing mix, very important now. It isn't a case that they're going to make a beeline for a new store that's opened up 6 miles away. They are now looking for convenience in terms of where they go. Promotion, we've not discussed yet. It is significant within oligopolies. But I think these ones that we're now going to look at are very important. People, which hasn't had any discussion. The processes, well, if you've been to supermarkets, you're well aware there's been a lot of developments in terms of the processes, but none of that's been raised within this particular part of the Preseen material, and the physical appearance. And I think we've got some of that to come. But really, when you look at the marketing mix, these are the key aspects that the likes of merchants in Pickland or Tesco's in the UK will use in order to generate their sales. This is how they're marketing their product. They're perceived as having, in the case of what we've looked at so far, fair prices. We haven't looked at product. Being in the right place for the customers to actually make the sales. Haven't looked at promotion. And the physical appearance, which is something which I think we're going to come across in the next few pages. So we now move into online retailing, which has shown strong growth, again against a very low starting point, but certainly worth a mention. Right, there's two different operating models. Now, we've got to stick very closely to this Preseen material. I know that in the back of my mind, the fact that what they're describing is different from what happens with it in Tesco's in the UK does make me wonder whether the examiner's setting himself up for an opportunity with a question here. But let's look at what those two alternatives are. The one is the hubs being stores which are not open to the public and are used as places where members of the supermarket staff can collect the orders and get them ready to either be delivered to the customers or put in a convenient place for the customers to come along and collect themselves. The other is the fulfilling orders from an existing retail sales outlets. I think if you go regularly shopping in the UK, you may well have seen this taking place, where members of staff go round with trolleys alongside members of the public and they are collecting their orders. Lots of scope here. As I say, this differs from what happens in the UK, certainly within Tesco's, because Tesco's use a combination of the two. In certain areas, their designated shoppers will go and collect the various products that someone's ordered online, and then they would be able to put it into a storage area, either ready for dispatch or ready for the customer to collect. And Tesco's also run hubs, and certainly in a place called Crawley near Gatwick Airport there is a major hub, and that's used by Tesco's to serve a lot of South London. We know that relevant costs is part of the P1 syllabus, and by having orders fulfilled within an existing store, the relevant cost of that online service is lower than it would be from a hub, simply because the online store is there already, and so any costs of running the store, because it is simply a store, would have been covered through the sales to the public at large. And only the specific costs that relate to the collecting of the items from the shelves by specific online staff within that store, and only the costs attributable to storing and perhaps delivering those bags of shopping that those online staff shoppers have collected would be relevant to online sales. Whereas in the hubs, every cost that a hub incurs is a cost of an online sale. And that's something that I've highlighted here, and I've written about it because I think when we look at relevant costs, and given my own gut reaction to seeing something which was different to what's happening in the UK, made me think that the examiner has set themselves up here, ready for one of the 5 exams in August to test relevant costing in this context. The growth trend is expected to continue and further fuel the demand for convenience stores. So we saw in an earlier paragraph the reference to a small weekly shop and then the use of convenience stores. This is a continuation of that point. So the weekly shop could be online and the daily shopping could be from the convenience stores. And here we highlight the costs of delivery from the customer's perspective, the fact that online orders sometimes lead to customers receiving substitute products, and concerns that online shoppers have over the sell-by dates. All 3 are points which have been encountered by all the UK online selling organisations. There is a resistance to being charged for delivery by customers, and when a customer's ordered, for example, Heinz baked beans, then they don't want the shop to substitute with a different brand. Now, there are ways that this has been dealt with. This isn't discussed within this Preseen material, so it's a possible question, but here we're looking at the customer requirements. And thirdly, the customers are looking to be sure that the products that they buy have got long sell-by dates. So, given those issues, then you can see that the supermarkets have got their work cut out to try and make sure that they meet those demands. We then move on to the next paragraph, and I think here I can be really quite helpful, because what we've got are 2 points at the beginning of the paragraph that I think the examiner hasn't made completely clear, but I will make clear. When this paragraph starts with high delivery costs and inconvenient delivery times, the examiner means high delivery costs to a firm such as merchants, the supermarket company. Inconvenient delivery times to the supermarket company. This isn't something that is in the context of the customer. This is in the context of the seller. And what they mean is that it costs them more to deliver a £50 order of tea bags and tomato ketchup, baked beans and so on to a customer than it costs them if that customer comes into the store, buys it, takes it to their car, puts it in the boot and drives it home themselves. So deliveries cost supermarket companies money. And if you pause for a moment and think, you will know that the likes of Netto, Lidl and Aldi do not have delivery, and I think that that's part of their business model, because it means that they can keep their costs down. Now, without any evidence, it wouldn't be a surprise to see that market growth by using online retailing may have led to the middle market supermarkets actually subsidising their delivery service through the sales in their major supermarkets. Does that make sense? So in other words, they are accepting lower margins there simply because it's helping them to keep their other supermarkets going as well. The inconvenient delivery times, here's a nice example. If we were running a supermarket, we would love to employ a couple of delivery drivers and give them 8-hour shifts each, get them in and get them to fill up the vans, go off and deliver the shopping to the various customers over an 8-hour period. What's happening instead are that customers are coming in and saying, oh no, I want mine within a particular time. And what's then happened is that many of the deliveries are being booked for the same times. So instead of having one delivery driver with one van going out for 8 hours, they're often having to have 4 delivery drivers with 4 vans going out for 2 hours. Inconvenient delivery times. And this has led to the grocery click and collect. So that the click and collect is very much in the supermarket's interests. And then we read on and we can see that click and collect in groceries is more complex due to product perishability. So here I've done some industry research and I've seen that the likes of the supermarkets will often have 3 storage areas when they're dealing with click and collect. So someone who's placed an order for frozen items, that will be in the click and collect area in a freezer. For refrigerated items, in a refrigerator, and for non-frozen or refrigerated, they are held in an ambient temperature area. So if you've got a fairly small order, you may well have 3 bags, 1 in each, and they then are what you would collect as a customer who's placed an order for click and collect. You would collect 3 bags, and the member of staff would get those bags from those 3 different places based on the temperature. The sort of thing that can't really be done generally. So whereas certainly John Lewis themselves have click and collect arrangements where you can collect items that you've ordered online and they simply have them stored either in their Waitrose stores or elsewhere in ambient temperature. So holding things in a railway station is all right so long as it doesn't need special storage requirements. We mentioned that the retail stores were more profitable because you didn't have those delivery costs and so on. And here we've now got the stores trying to draw the customers back. So attempting to draw the customers back into the stores has been a characteristic of what's been going on. And here we're able to go back to our marketing mix because here we get additional points that we can add. Retailers are investing in store refurbishments and forming partnerships with companies to provide additional services. This is all part of the marketing mix. I've added my little box again and I've highlighted this physical appearance aspect. I can see the examiner asking you within one of those exams to break down the marketing mix that's used by merchants and then go into the detail. I'm saying within this very first video, as soon as you see them asking you for a marketing mix, do not stop. Once you've done the first 4 Ps, go all the way through all 7. This is most definitely a service industry, and it's a service industry where these all 7 Ps are vitally important. We move on to competitive analysis. and here we can see a repetition. Now, repetition, not a big deal as far as the first video is concerned, but from the point of view of a sceptical tutor such as myself and your own exam preparation, as soon as we see repetition, that is a definite clue that the examiner thinks that this is a big deal and is worth it to tell us more than once, because that's going to turn up within our exam. Here I've written in the importance of this repetition and then given you an idea of one way that the examiner could test this. You could be asked how this static 6% of the total sales value, 6% of this $150 billion market going to 4 major players, and how that affects the marketing that is carried out by a firm such as Merchants. And then I would say that you would answer that question by explaining the nature of oligopolies and going on and explaining how the marketing mix is applicable within this kind of fierce competitive environment. And certainly this is true even in the UK. I know it's different from here. We will read on and we will see what goes on in terms of the payment for carrier bags, but certainly within the research I carried out, Tesco's had approached Asda and approached Sainsbury's with a view to them all introducing payment for carrier bags, but would not introduce it unilaterally. They would not have payment for carrier bags in Tesco's only because they didn't want to lose market share to the other ones. So fierce competition, a lot of protection of market share, and short-term promotional campaigns and lowest price and price matching promises. These are promotional aspects within our marketing mix. So if we think back, we're now filling our table with the marketing mix content, and I see that as very important, that this is clearly an area which is important within this business, but it's also very important as far as our exam is concerned, that we can see that the examiner is giving us these clues, and I think loud and clear that the marketing mix is going to turn up. Merchants is a leading player with 24% of the market share. Well, yes, we discussed that in the very first paragraph. It's got a significant lead of 12% over its nearest rival. So we can see this large share of what we could call a slow growth or almost zero growth market could be an opportunity for us to use the marketing, so the Boston Consulting Group aspect, where you compare the growth of the market with the share within the market. I'll give a little mention to it. Exactly how, at this stage, the examiner hasn't given us sufficient to be able to see how that might be examined, if at all. But the Boston Consulting Group matrix compares market share on one axis with market growth on the other axis. So we've got a combination of the two, and if we were looking at this from a product's point of view, then if you've got a large share with very little growth, then you may well be looking at something which we could call a cash cow. A little bit of something coming up in the future, the idea that the discount supermarkets are going to enter the convenience stores. And certainly if you think about the locations, they certainly are generally in convenient locations and perhaps slightly larger than the likes of a Tesco Express, but they aren't the big supermarkets in the same way that the hypermarkets and so on are for the big players. Another repetition here, that the convenience stores is expected to continue to grow, and customers are going to avoid the large weekly shop. Perhaps we are looking here in terms of the getting in the car and driving off for a large weekly shop, more so than the alternative that I was suggesting earlier, which might be the online weekly shop. And the dissatisfaction with the standard of fresh food means that they will continue to buy the fresh food from the convenience stores. So the discount supermarkets will have the highest growth rates. Well, fine, but as I said when we were looking at the percentage earlier, that I wouldn't be surprised to see the percentage fall even if the value is growing. And hypermarkets are expected to remain the largest channel. So a significant point here, probably worth a red underlining, that the hypermarkets are the largest channel even though sales are stagnating. Online retailing posing a threat to the hypermarket and supermarket? Well, yes, and growth rates in this channel are forecast to be in double figures as the channel's leading operators continue to implement multi-channel retailing strategy. So this is certainly within our 4 Ps for the main 4 aspects of the marketing mix. This is to do with place. We've got multi-channel, is that we can sell you supermarket groceries in all these different ways. So the distribution networks are very much what they are getting at when they talk about multi-channel retailing. Right, I've managed to scroll forward a little bit too far, but here we come. The rise in both convenience stores and discount supermarkets has been fueled by lower disposable income, and as a result, the change in the shopper buying habits. It remains to be seen if this will continue as the economy recovers, although there had been assertions earlier on that perhaps the sales that had been lost to the more expensive supermarkets, the Waitroses, may not be recovered quite so quickly, and similarly whether or not the switch from the mainstream middle market supermarkets to the discount supermarkets, whether that would come back either. As convenience stores and online grow, retailers need to decide what to do with their large out-of-town hubs. And I've certainly got an idea that I think is probably worth looking at before you come back and look at this again, or look at my second video. But here, what to do with large out-of-town stores. I'm going to recommend that you have a look on Google, and I'm going to recommend that you look at the Tesco Extra, a very large store. Oh, sorry about that. The Tesco Extra store at Watford is the one that the company itself considers to be a very good indicator of what stores are likely to do with their large hypermarkets and with falling demand or lack of attractiveness. So look up the Watford Tesco Extra store. Extra is what Tesco's call their hypermarkets, and just have a look and see that they're making it an attractive venue to take the family on a Saturday, or something along those lines, just so that it becomes a magnet, and in the process you can then do your shopping at the hypermarket. And Here they've got the idea of converting into click and collect locations. Well, certainly, but if you stop and read that again, I'm not sure that that's the examiner's intention, because the idea of the click and collect is that people would have to drive, but wouldn't want to drive very far. That one of the things that the out-of-town stores were losing out on was the fact that people were having to drive there. So, and the development of the drive-through shopping concept, well, this is already in the UK, and I'll give you the link. I know that because of the nature of this video, you'll need to copy it down, but there's one in Hertfordshire that I'll show you. So I've added the Tesco Extra Baldock with a link to an article from a newspaper in 2010. So this isn't fantastically new in the UK, but certainly it could be new in Pickland, and these are useful examples, and we know that the examiner has said since the first exams were taken in February that they are looking for industry examples within your answers. So if you're able to cite these examples, you're showing that you really have immersed yourself in this particular industry. Right, I'm going to sign off in a minute, but before I do, I just want to summarize 2 points. That we've looked at the pastel analysis, and we've looked at the marketing mix, and I'm now going to complete as much as we can of the 2 little diagrams that I'd added earlier. Certainly with the environments, we've got the 2 areas that we've come across have been the stagnating demand, and the way that they've had to respond to that has been to lower their prices, and also because of the nature of the oligopoly that they're operating in, and the changing in the buying habits, and the fact that they now have developed more and more convenience stores because that's what the customers are demanding. I'm sure, because we know enough from our sort of daily shopping habits of our own, that there will be technological changes that we are able to build into this, but at this stage I don't want to add things that aren't in the pre-scene. Similarly, there are political aspects. Environmental issues are quite a big deal as far as supermarkets are concerned. Legal, well, they are operating within an environment where the food could cause food poisoning and so on. So there's going to be legislative aspects in that respect, and there's going to be other legislative aspects in terms of employment rights and so on. But I've put nothing stated so far because I'm sticking very much to the content of this pre-scene. Now we'll look at the marketing mix and see that we've got quite a lot more here just from these first 3 pages within the case study. So here we see the marketing mix. All 4 of the main aspects that we would see for any organisation have been highlighted. Yes, they're using prices as a key way to attract their customers. We've already recognised that the various companies are pretty much the same, certainly within the middle market, but they are still competing on price. If you compare that with what you might have seen in the UK, then television advertisements tend to show price comparisons between Asda and Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Morrison's. Interestingly, Morrison's recently have added the discounters within their own price comparisons. The product, certainly in the past, they were using this to justify why their products were slightly more expensive than discounters on the grounds that they were better quality, but there's now less difference. The place, yes, we can see that there's a wide variety of locations. Remember that this word place perhaps is quite useful in the context of a supermarket company, but it is very much a way of distributing, and they're distributing their groceries through all the different types of stores and through online, but the idea of convenience is the aspect that's on the growth side of this marketing mix. The promotions, primarily short-term, primarily price-based. People haven't been mentioned yet. I think that they could well be. It would be a very suitable sort of area to look at from an HR perspective, but we haven't seen it yet. And the process is, again, I think there's going to be lots of technological opportunities for us to look at supermarkets, but they haven't occurred yet. But the physical appearance, yes, that's in there already, and we can see that store refurbishments are seen as important. Okay, thank you very much for watching. This video has been slightly longer than I had originally intended, but I think it was useful to go through the whole of the industry section in a single video so that we can see a very good useful background before we move on and we start looking at the specifics for the merchants company themselves. Certainly if you're looking at continuing with these, which I very much hope you will, then go to the Astranti website and you'll be able to log in and join and then subscribe to the remaining videos within this series and put yourself in an excellent chance of passing this operational case study exam. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Astranti Financial Training, probably the foremost organisation in the preparation of case study exams for CIMA in this country and probably the world, has put together an operational case study course getting ready for the August 2015 operational case study exams. There's going to be 5 of them, and this is the 3rd diet of exams. So we have a wealth of understanding now. We saw in the original material what was planned, and now we've seen in the February exams and the May exams exactly what that means in terms of the way in which questions are asked and the type of answers that the examiner is expecting. We've analysed, we've really gone into a great deal of detail looking at merchants being the case study company that we are preparing the August 2015 exams based on. There's a video series, 8 videos, each going into detail after detail. Certainly the first ones look step by step through the Preseen material. Then there are the ones which look specifically at how the P1 syllabus could be examined. Another one on how the F1 syllabus may be examined. Then we've got a strategic analysis and my 10 most likely topics that will be examined within the 5 exams that are being held in August. So you'll have my expert guidance to take you through the key points within this exam. Merchant Supermarket is the company that we're looking at. They're based in Pickland. They're the largest supermarket company there. There has been a decline in hypermarkets there. There's been a growth of convenience stores there. And there's been some changes in the buying behaviour of the customers. And new approaches to how buying takes place. So the Preseen material is analysed for you if you follow the Astranti course. I think it looks a bit like Tesco's, but as you'll see, there are specific differences between the Tesco company in the UK and the Merchants company in Pickland. The Astranti operational case study is useful for busy people. We give you 3 live masterclasses, and these are recorded so that if you can't actually listen when they're on in actual dates, then you'll be able to look at them afterwards. And even if you've been in attendance on those dates and you want to recap, then you've got the recorded version for you to go back to and to listen and see what's going on. There's interaction within the masterclasses so that you can ask questions and you can get specific answers there and then. The online supermarkets exams are based on the merchant supermarkets, and they'll be during 1 week in August, and we will have 8 videos analysing the Preseen material. So I would encourage you to contact Astranti, and I've given you the website address in order to get the course details for this case study. I think it will save you time, and it will add to the number of marks that you would get if you were to try and attempt it without our help. Thank you very much, and I will look forward to you joining us.